All right, are you ready?
Hold on.
All right. Okay, welcome everybody to this Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meeting on June 6, 2023. We do have all of our board members present, 6 of whom are in person, and board member Sweat, who is participating remotely tonight. We do have one order of business first before the public meeting opens, or before the board meeting convenes. We do have a need for a closed session this evening, and I'll accept a motion to move into the closed session.
I can make that motion. On June 6, 2023 at 5:01 p.m., I move that the Board of Education go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining and deployment of security personnel devices or systems.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second from Vice President Williams and Board Member Anderson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Sweat.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Seeker, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Perfect. That motion passes. Folks in the audience, we'll just ask you to step out. We should only be about 20 to 30 minutes.
We'll leave the microphones on because that's the only way Christy can hear us.
Yep.
But I will turn them down a little bit, just they don't carry quite as much. That's good.
And something else.
That's good. Insufficient. Yeah, good.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like to welcome you back to our meeting this evening. Thank you for joining us. I do have some just brief recognitions in the welcome, and before we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I want to make sure that I recognize our association presidents who are either with us here tonight or who are joining us remotely. For SLCSD, we have President Janil Rodriguez. For SLEA, we have President James Tobler. I haven't seen James, but I see Mike in the back. There he is. Hey, James. And then for SLEOPA, we have President Whitney Favre. Our AFT Salt Lake Transportation Local 6226, we have President Cindy Davis. And then for Salt Lake Buildings and Grounds, we have President Elia Ocampo. Hi, Elia. And then for Child Nutrition, we have President Tanya Slaughter. Thank you for joining us this evening. I believe Student Board Member May is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lydia, for leading us in that. We do have a time-certain public hearing on the Salt Lake Virtual Elementary, so we will jump to that right now just based on our state laws that we have to abide by, and we'll jump into our request to speak after that. So is there anybody here to speak on behalf of Salt Lake Virtual Elementary? I have one parent, and I know we have a letter that was, I think a couple of letters that were sent to the superintendent and board leadership.
And those will be attached to the minutes.
Thank you for that, Superintendent. Would you like to join us, please?
Where do I go?
Just any one of these seats.
All right, great. I'm Erica. I'm speaking as a parent of one of the Salt Lake Virtual students. I'm also have been a remote worker for 10 years, so remote is not new to me. My middle child, Simon, he's very bright and compassionate first grader who's been a part of SLVE since kindergarten, his first day. Through no fault of his own, he has the misfortune of being born to not one, but 2 parents with ADHD, and you probably guessed that it did not skip a generation with him. He's easily distracted, and that demeanor could be seen as disruptive in a traditional learning environment, as children with ADHD are often labeled troublemakers, class clowns, and such. And because of this, all their positive qualities can be overshadowed. And it can kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy, setting them up for failure. 9 out of 10 kids with ADHD require help within the classroom in some form or another, which can also be expensive. I'm happy to say, thanks to the virtual nature of the classes and the dedicated teaching staff at Salt Lake Virtual, never compromising on their duties or on my child's development, Simon feels cherished by his school and his classmates, and he thrives. He even scored 100% on his language test at the end of the year. So The school's a haven that embraces diversity, nurtures talent, fosters creativity. In addition to course studies, they enjoy art, dance, regular in-person days, and educational field trips. They nurture holistic development of not only my child, but countless others in a way that would not be possible with fully asynchronous alternatives suggested, or even the distant mixed programming in the Jordan district, which might be difficult for some to access. The school's innovative and flexible model and placement in the heart of Salt Lake City has been a boon to parents like my spouse and I who work from home, and to families grappling with health issues, neurodivergence, and poverty that can impact their ability to thrive in a traditional school. Our youngest child, he is 1, he spent a considerable time in the NICU after birth. He battled respiratory problems for the entire first year of his life, and the existence of the school allowed us to keep him safe from infections that could hospitalize him or worse. We didn't have to compromise Simon's education or social development because of the school. My family story is not unique. It's shared by many families who found solace, support, and success in a progressive model of education that fills a gap traditional classroom either doesn't or can't cater to. It provides an inclusive, diverse, and adaptive environment for today's learners. I understand this decision that you're facing is complex. It's impacted by numerous factors, but I implore you to consider the invaluable role Salt Lake Virtual has played in our community. I don't know if you're going to save the money that you anticipate saving by shutting down the school. The cost to properly meet the needs that are already being met by these students by Salt Lake Virtual is probably going to be substantial. You'll likely lose children and funding to other districts, and eventually you may even need this again, and you'll have to start from scratch at the taxpayer's expense. But most importantly, shutting down the school is going to come at the expense of our children's well-being, and because of this, I appeal to you for my family and all those families whose lives have been positively changed by this school to keep this choice available to us and others. Please don't choose to deprive our children of having their unique needs met fully. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you for joining us. All right. Are there any other folks here that may have joined us after? Okay. Thank you so much for your comments, and we really appreciate you coming to speak your truth, and we honor that very much, so thank you. Jumping back to our opening items, we do have some recognitions that we would like to give today as well. We have the Utah History Fair winners. Dr. Hall, I believe you're presenting on this evening.
Hi, I'm not going to sit down because I'm going to introduce Desi Olson, who is our Social Studies and National Board Certified Teacher Specialist, and she is going to introduce our teacher and our students who are here tonight. So, Desi, would you like to come on up, everybody, and Kim,
Yeah.
Grace, and Anna? Yeah, come on up. I'm gonna pull these two chairs. Sit down. Go about that. Oh, right. All right. Done the useful piece.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Let me tell you a little bit about the National History Day in Utah. It's a year-round history education program serving students in grades 4 through 12. Throughout this program, students learn history by doing history. They can choose a topic from local, national, or world history, and then they learn how to conduct real historical research, analyze primary and secondary sources, and make an argument based on evidence. And then finally, students create an exhibit, documentary, performance, paper, or website project to showcase their work. So the program culminates with a series of contests, and these young ladies each not only succeeded in the Salt Lake contest, but now they achieved qualification to move on to the national contest. So we're really excited about them. I'd like to I'll introduce them in a moment. I'd also like to introduce Ms. Kim Perry, their teacher, who is just phenomenal. She has been doing History Fair since 2013, and it just does an exceptional job with her students and the process. I also would like to recognize Kim for the toolkit, the History Day toolkit that she developed for teachers, and also that she was recognized as the 2016 Utah History Day Teacher of the Year. So we're really proud of her. And congratulations to our incredible students, Grace Kingsford and Anna Tuft. They won in the group website on the project called Susan B. Anthony's Fight for Women's Rights. And then be moving on to the national contest, June 11th through the 15th in Washington, D.C.
And I know Yandere is going to get a picture. All right, thank you so much. Congratulations, Ben. All right, up next for our recognitions, we have a recognition for our facility services. Elia Campo, would you want to join us up front? Excellent. Alan, is there anything that you'd want to add before I jump into our statement?
Well, I haven't read the statement, but I just want to recognize all the hard work that this group does to keep our schools, especially during this winter where we had a lot of snow, more than normal. They were working all hours of the night to keep those walks and driveways cleared, so we appreciate them very much.
And so, as you know, as far as the hierarchy and chain of command goes for facilities, that goes through Alan's department and his team. So, Aaliyah, I just have a little statement that I wanted to read, if that's okay first. Okay, now that it's June and winter is finally over, at least we think so. I believe it was hailing in Rose Park a few minutes ago. We wanted to take a moment to recognize the 315 employees in our facilities department. These incredible individuals, ranging from our custodial staff, our grounds crews, journeyman carpenters, boiler techs, trade helpers, equipment manager, transportation, maintenance, and so many others, helped us survive the most snow-packed winter in Utah in 70 years. In a year where we saw record snowfall, and where folks were still skiing as recently as last Monday, we're grateful for the dedication of these employees and for their sacrifices throughout the season to ensure our students and staff could get to school safely and could have a safe place to walk, park, and play once at school. On top of that, once the outside work was done, they still moved on to the inside work required to be ready to receive students each day. They work long, early, and tiring hours up before the sun and make sure that they can safely clear snow from our parking lots and school grounds. Some days our teams worked almost around the clock just to make sure we could continue providing crucial services and quality education to our students. And remember, while they're the ones working hard to clear snow for us, nobody is doing that for them. Thank you to each of you for your dedication, your flexibility, and for the personal sacrifices you made this year, sacrificing sleep, your physical energy, your time, and so much more for the benefit of our schools and our students. I'm grateful to have such dedication on our team and invite you all to please join me in giving a round of applause in appreciation for our facilities teams. Now, Aaliyah, before I turn it over to you, I'd love for you to just say a couple of things. I've gotten to know you a lot better this last year or so, and I just can't speak enough about how awesome your team is and all of the folks that work underneath you, all 315 employees. Whenever I encounter folks that are on your team, they all say the same thing about students and about the dedication, and where that comes from for your team is to make sure that the environment is safe, that it's a quality environment for our students to learn, for our teachers to teach. And I think that we could all benefit from that. We already do, but we could benefit from that framework and that thinking of how we put students first in our school district. So thank you for setting that example for us. If you have a few words, I'd love for you to say
I mean,
something.
I wasn't expecting to be up here, but I'm very on the spot. But no, I would like to thank all of you. It's definitely an amazing feeling, and I bet that everybody that's listening to this in facility services is just super excited to hear all of this. Like Alan Kearsley was saying, it's a lot of sleepless hours, a lot of time put into it, and I mean, it's the end goal is just everyone else. It's for the kids. So it's definitely all worth it, and it's nice when you see the kids coming in for school and they're like, oh my gosh, you clean all that up with all the cool machines and all the shovels, and it's like, yeah. So no, definitely it's a huge team effort, and the whole team is just amazing to work with, and it's all worthwhile for the kids. So thank you guys.
You're welcome. All right, our third and final recognition for the evening, the Utah Educational Library Media Association Teacher Librarian of the Year, Dr. Hall.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Shanna Lewis to come up. And you'll notice that all of us, yes, Tom has a cool t-shirt. It is because they are a teacher librarian in Salt Lake City School District. I would just like to recognize Shanna. Shanna is the teacher librarian at Clayton Middle School. We just had two young ladies sitting here. It's very difficult for women to win in the National History Fair. I don't think that there's any surprise that they came from a school supported by Shanna as their librarian. This award is awarded to one librarian every year for exemplary service to fulfill the needs of students in the school community, creativity in programming and the use of content, collaborating with peers, demonstrating student engagement using technology, outreaching to parents and families, and promoting the library and what it offers. And Shanna really exemplifies all of these things in the years and the time that she has been at Clayton. One of the things that we know that is a wonderful part of our district is that we do have teacher librarians in every school, and those librarians really create a learning community that enables teachers and students and parents to be supported at all times. And I would just like to recognize Shanna for the work that she has done and that all of our teacher librarians do to make sure that students have appropriate and wonderful reading and learning experiences in their library media centers. Thanks.
Thank you, Shanna.
We, as library teachers, would like to give to the board the book, The Hill We Climb.
Oh, nice.
This is the inaugural poem for the country written by Amanda Gorman. And one of my favorite parts of this is, says, if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. And I feel that that's very powerful. As a Salt Lake City School District, we strive to put our children first, as well as the fact that we as teacher librarians would like to thank the Salt Lake City School District for putting certified library teachers certified teachers in the libraries. And so thank you again, and thank you for this recognition. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You get one too.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, will you pass this on?
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shanna, and thank you to all of our teacher librarians and your colleagues. As a library department manager, can't thank you enough. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much to all that we recognized and all your efforts and hard work to impact the lives of our students. Moving on to our consent agenda. This might be the longest consent agenda that we've had in quite some time, but nonetheless, I'm willing to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda or any further discussion.
President Salazar, I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed in the minutes of today.
Thank you so much. We have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second from board members Bade and Jensen. Any discussion to the motion?
I have one thing to say.
Board Member Anderson.
There's obviously a lot of things on here, but one of the things we review regularly is the school financial report. And Alan has heard me mention this many times, but there's a lot of situations where a school may have done a musical and they have $200 left over, and that account just sits and stays. And so every time we approve them, I really would encourage all of our schools to find ways to use that money on current students in classrooms if they have some old accounts rolling over. So as I look at that, I just think let's, spend that on something awesome for kids. And with that said, I still think it's worth approving the consent agenda as written.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. Any other thoughts, questions, discussion? All right. With that, I'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Sika.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you so much, Board, for taking the time to review all of those. The next element of our agenda is our request to speak. I do have a statement that the Board has asked me to read before we start the public comment portion of our agenda. The Board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the public comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our Board rules governing your comments. Number 1, time may not be used to air complaints concerning bidding contracts, employment, or personnel issues, to criticize or defame district employees, or to make complaints for which other avenues for redress exist. Number 2, time may not be used by employees or their representatives to circumvent formal communication channels or establish grievance or negotiations procedures. Number 3, the total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with individual presentations limited to 3 minutes and group presentations limited to 5. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the Board from deliberating or taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with a speaker on the topic discussed. Thank you for that. Our first speaker this evening is Amanda Longwell. Amanda, are you with us? Hi, Amanda. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Before I get to my other two topics, just wanted to do a shout out to Clayton. They just did I believe it was stated that it was our first award ceremony, and having my middle child go from elementary, where a teacher actually said, "What's wrong with your daughter?" to receiving the Presidential Educational Award for Outstanding Academic Excellence was just a very proud moment. So it was phenomenal that Clayton made that effort to recognize those students and their excellent outcomes. We're sad to see Dallin leave, but excited to see what he does in his new position as network director. So regarding the no public comment at study sessions, you guys have heard from me about that before. Grateful it's on the agenda tonight. Simply put, again, when you don't have public comment at study sessions, you guys, like you're stating, you can't make action. So based on your current structure, you're only permitting yourselves roughly to make action at one board meeting per month, and we have roughly 9 months of the academic year. So really limiting your ability to make efficient, timely decisions. And when every moment counts for our kids' education, those kind of delays for the district can be detrimental for our student body, especially our more impacted students. So again, please find a way to allow that public comment. It doesn't necessarily mean, obviously, that you have to make decisions, business decisions at those study sessions, but it opens up that opportunity for the public to comment on study sessions that impact the community at minimum, and it also gives that ability to act immediately if it is pertinent to do so. So please revisit that. That's such a frustrating piece, on top of how difficult it is to get signed up. I had to sign up a month ago to speak at this meeting, having no idea what tonight's agenda was about, because it's so difficult to get onto the agenda. So, or to the public comment. The other piece is kind of regarding budget and the org chart. It had been stated in prior board meetings, I can't remember how far back, that basically because certain positions that are not currently filled remain on the organization chart, those funds are still reserved for those positions. One was created during Dr. Gadsden's tenure. Another existed but was never filled. The associate superintendent, it stopped being filled because we were seeing the declining enrollment. So that one was able to be filled without board needing to come to the board for permission. And the other sitting there stagnant. So as you're looking at these budgets, and if I had heard you correctly, Alan, I presume those monies are still being reserved for those positions that are not being staffed. We should be looking at closing those positions and allowing the next superintendent, who will hopefully be here for a long time, to determine the necessity of reopening those and having to come to the board to have that discussion versus just unilaterally deciding to fill them and continuing to use those monies that we desperately need elsewhere, obviously. So those are my two main points. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. All right, next on our request to speak sign-up sheet, Lillian Oscarson. And Lillian, I believe this is your second time with us, right? Excellent.
This time I got papers.
Sweet deal. Alan, do you mind helping her pass those out, please?
Everyone gets one food waste and one recycling.
Okay. Just let us know when you're ready, Lillian.
What? Hello, I'm Lillian Oscarson, a 7th grader from Bryant Middle School. I've been here to talk about this problem in our cafeterias in our district. In our cafeterias in our district, we have one landfill bin. It's where you put the trash bag in, you put all the food scraps, the paper plates that are not recyclable, and then all the plastic utensils that are too thick to go in the recycling can. Well, what we can do to make 30% of our landfills are food waste. But to help limit the food waste, our district can be part of it. We can use the anaerobic digester, which is the one that says save energy paper. The second piece of each of those papers is the pricing for each can. We can help by limiting the amount of food waste in our landfills by using an anaerobic digester. So a digester takes all of the food that we eat, that we throw away. So let's say you go to breakfast and you get a muffin from the school. You can throw away your plastic wrapper in the recycling can and throw away the rest of the muffin that you did not eat in the food waste can. Then you leave no trace behind you. The plastic goes to momentum recycling, where it gets turned in, where it gets recycled, and then the food waste goes to momentum recycling too, but a different part. And what happens to the food waste is it gets turned into energy and fertilizer, which are better than having it sit in landfills for multiple years and have it emit methane and carbon dioxide. Methane alone is 20 times more damaging to our atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So we can help limit the problem with recycling cans and food waste cans in our cafeterias. And like Miss Anderson was saying, when schools get extra money, we can use that money for cafeterias. Our schools are supposed to be for learning. At lunch, when students just throw it in the landfill, what are they learning? Yay! Head of lettuce goes sit in the landfill for 14 years. Let's see how long a plastic wrapper takes. We can do so much better and help the students learn from a young age that being useful to our environment can save our earth.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lillian. We really appreciate the information. And Superintendent, remind me, but I believe we had Mr. Schulte before he retired. in communication with Lillian. Do we know who's maintaining that line of communication?
Most likely it will be, I'm on the spot. I just refer to him as the Energy Czar.
Okay.
Greg Levecki.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I know there are some schools that have chosen to do this on their own. They're using their own discretionary money for this. A couple that have contracted him, but Greg Lebecki will continue this conversation.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Lillian. Really.
It's momentum that picks it up, and it's Wasatch Integrated Digester, I think, is the service right next to the North Salt Lake sewer plant, I guess you would say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Up next on our request to speak is Tanya Slaughter. And Tanya, I believe you're... Oh.
Tanya shaking your head no.
No? Oh, all right. No problem. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, we're waiting. Perfect. All right. Okay, so up next, we have another group. Icona is here, so we have Afa, Icona, and Tita Vai. Hope I said that right. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And Afa, since you're representing a group, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Si Oto Ofa and Happy Pride. I'm going to speak to you about something that is pertinent to our family, but I just wanted to show on behalf of my children, Tangata and Bele, but I wanted to have our village stand up and thank them so much for coming. Everyone that came with us today and our ancestors, can you guys stand up, please? That came to support our family. I stand here with my children. We are grounded on the ancestral homelands of the Nuche, Numi, Nuivi, Kusiuta, and many tribes who have contributed to Salt Lake City, including the Dene. My name is Amelia Leafaituangi Aikona Numeitolu, and I hail from Tonga, and I'm so proud to live in Rosa Park, Salt Lake City. We are here on behalf of our children and the many children who cannot be here. My partner and husband, Thi, is working right now, but he's also here. He was part of the group. I just want to show to you how important education is to our family. My grandfather, Siasi Numeitolu, oh my gosh, not in protocol, Kataki. I just want to recognize the Honorable Jenny Sika, our relative here, and we're so proud of you, sis, and we love you. Ofalahiatu. My grandfather, Siasi Numeitolu, was the first Western doctor in Tonga. He went to India in the 1920s. My mother, Lithia Makakafaki Numeitolu, is the first PhD graduate here on Turtle Island, the North American continent. And I believe education comes in many ways, but to follow within that, we have taken our children to Harvard, to UCLA, and to not just to, but through our artwork. My son was a student in 2022 at Newman School. He was called the N-word multiple times, and I spoke with the Principal Nick Shar, and she was. We wanted to speak with the parents, like to sit down, and do it maybe like within our style. The Oceania Indigenous Tongan style of like, hey, let's sit down, let's talk about it, let's have a meal. However, Principal Nick Shar said, it's taken care of, we will handle it. This continued on to, that was in summer of 2022. In October of 2022, I could see the changes in Tangata. He was not eating well, he was not sleeping well, he was not as confident as he usually is. And I followed the steps. I follow the steps that you do here at Newman School in the public school system. So I spoke to staff members, I spoke with the principal, etc. Nothing was being done, and still this was happening to my son. He was still being called the N-word, being pushed down the stairs. So many things were happening to him. One day I spoke to the student after school, and I said, "Hi, I'm Tangata's mom. You will not be calling my son the N-word any longer, and you will not bully any of the children." So my son is the type of person, he was standing up for some girls who are also being bullied by this person I will name Z. Z continued this, so this particular day, school board, I told the Z this, and Z turned around and pushed me and called me the F word and the B word. So there was nothing. I told him to walk away. He went to get his brother, who came up and literally pushed me multiple times and called me the F word, the B word, the N word. And so I am very aware, and we raise our son that we're very aware. Education is very important to you, as I mentioned, and that he is not allowed to speak back. He can question things, but he's not allowed to disrespect elders or disrespect his students. And I'm very aware where he's brown. He lives in 2023, and I'm a brown mother living in 2023, and with the violence that is going on in our world. So I walked to the school. So they just kept on pushing us and swearing at us. So I walked to the principal's office, where our beloved Annabelle, the administrative assistant, was there. And she said, "Please stop calling Amalia Afa that." And he said, "F you be to Annabelle." So I just want to expedite this. So when we were walking out, and so there was nobody there at the school. Everyone was busy. It was after school. I'm so sorry. I think that's the school calling that we owe some money for the lunch. But please work on that too.
That's a whole other comment.
But anyway, then the parents, the mom had the similar reaction, and she threatened and said, like, let's fight, and call me these words, including with them. So then I said, no, let's go with the principal, because I'm very aware, and I also understand that, there's a lot of trauma in our lives. We have capitalism, we have bills to pay, we have white supremacy. There's, as the young, amazing warrior in the back, like there's environmental tragedies and challenges in our life. So we walked away from there. Then the husband ran up to my face I was holding their hand to go. I was trying to find the principal, but I decided to just get him out of the space. And he said, "Come on, I'll beat you right here." And had the same language I don't want to repeat again. The principal I spoke with immediately. And the principal didn't see that there needed to be a meeting or a conflict resolution or some type of healing. So I said, my son will not come until there's a mediation. There was no moderator at the school. The family asked that the police be there because we know your type of people. Well, that's our people, right? My people roll deep. Thank you, our sisters. But
I think we need a notification for that.
Sorry. But thank you. But I just wanted to say, sorry, is that we have people here who want to and who can help with this to stop this type of violence, and they're in the community. They're us. We're parents, and we're leaders and within the environment, within gardens, Carry the Water, and Diva. There's so many folks here who want to help and to stop and blockade this type of tragedies, but also to heal our communities. Thank you so much. Ofalayatu.
Thank you for joining us and for sharing that experience and for reliving that. I know that reliving those types of experiences can enforced trauma that you and your son and your family and the community's experienced. Young scholar, I'm sorry that you had that experience in our schools with one of your peers. Superintendent, if it's okay, I'd like to see if Dr. Taylor could meet with them in the hallway to see what kind of resolution we can come to. Dr. Taylor, do you mind raising your hand? But I certainly want you all to connect and see what kind of steps we can take to address this in a more meaningful way. Okay, thank you so much. That concludes our public comment portion. We do have a couple of things that we're going to skip until 7 p.m. We are going to jump right into...
Sorry, can I ask one thing?
Yes.
I just received a message that maybe there were virtual elementary commenters who didn't understand the procedure for making a comment. So is it possible, before we close this public comment period, to just quickly confirm that no one here wanted to speak about the virtual elementary? I don't know the procedures for that, so.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I asked, I think, twice if there were folks that
that's what I thought.
We're still here to speak. But if they have comments that they would like to have attached to the minutes for this evening, to please send those to Superintendent Bates and the board.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along to agenda item G, the report section of our agenda. We do have a legislative audit update, and I believe Policy and Legal Services Director Christina Kindle will be leading us in that discussion and report.
It's actually going to be a team effort.
Oh, it's a team effort. All right.
Oh, it's the long one?
Just note, next year you're going to have the quickest budget presentation ever.
I prepared the slides. It's very short.
All right, so as you remember, we had a legislative audit last year that was presented to the legislature in December, and we're just going to kind of give an update on where we stand on some of the issues there. Christina, are you going to do the slide thing?
Oh.
Push the next button?
Yes.
Or do we need to get Tiffany up here?
Look at me go.
So just by review, the report contains 17 recommendations. 2 were recommending action by the legislature. There were 5 that recommended action by the Board of Education and 10 that recommended action by the district.
So because the 2 that recommended action by the legislature is completely outside of our purview scope of authority, we're not going to address those, but we'll be talking first about the recommendations for the Board of Education. So the first recommendation was 2.1, which was to review and follow the board's policies and handbook that make it clear that board members should not be involved in day-to-day administration of the district. So that was part of the board handbook subcommittee's charge in terms of updating the handbook. We updated it in several places to clearly articulate that concept. The 3 areas that we addressed it in were the authorities, responsibilities of the board, the characteristics of effective board members, and the relationship of the board with the superintendent. So that recommendation has been implemented. We would just wait for the board handbook to be approved. The recommendation 2.2 for the Board of Education was to continue to self-assess their compliance with policy, statute, and rule and their progress towards board goals at least every other year. What you may or may not recall is the board handbook was permissive in its language in terms of the board may engage in a self-assessment each year. We changed that language. Again, the board handbook subcommittee changed that language to make it a requirement that the board annually engage in a self-assessment. So that would be one of the new changes there as well.
Recommendation 2.4 is in cooperation with SLCSD, survey other districts, carefully consider best practices, and determine how to improve the written agreement. As part of the consent agenda today, there were some some changes to the SLCSD written agreement. I'd personally like to thank SLCSD for their willingness to have these discussions on changes that can be made to address this finding and improve student outcomes. So you saw some of those in the consent agenda, some of the effects of those discussions, and we will continue to have discussions with SLCSD to continue to look for ways we can improve the written agreement to improve student achievement.
Recommendation 4.1 was to evaluate possible elementary schools for permanent closure. Of course, the board is very aware that this is the process you're currently engaged in. So if, in terms of where you are in that process, you've obviously approved an official study list that encompassed all elementary schools, and staff are currently meeting with principals and school community council chairs to generate a core set of options which will be presented to the board in July. We're also in the process and have held some public meetings across the district to gather input and share information with our stakeholders. This is probably me. Recommendation 4.3 was to continue to ensure that Salt Lake City School District undertake an annual review of district enrollment and the configuration of district schools. So again, in board policy G5 and the accompanying administrative procedures, there was some permissive language in terms of that there may be an annual review. Again, that was changed to indicate that that shall happen annually. So we've addressed this recommendation as well. So the 10 recommendations for the district. Recommendation 1.1 was to plan future expenditures with demographic changes in mind. Various administrative procedures, including G5 and G10, have been updated to ensure that each year the district's demographic and enrollment information will be presented in an open board meeting and be used to guide future expenditures and boundary studies.
Recommendation 1.2, ensure Salt Lake City School District is using an efficient number of administrative staff to meet child nutrition needs. The Child Nutrition Department, speaking with Kelly Orton, is continually evaluating the needs of the department, and as vacancies occurs, determining whether to fill those vacancies or how those services can be addressed more efficiently if possible. Recommendation 1.3, develop a structured preventative maintenance plan and keep track of the needs and work history of all facilities. So Ricky Martinez, our Assistant Director of Facility Services, has created a comprehensive schedule of the district's preventative maintenance plan that will be online by June 30th, and then that will continue to be a living document as we add to it and improve it. And recommendation 1.4, implement a more robust internal audit function that includes a risk assessment of district programs and reports findings to Board Finance Committee. So the Board Finance Committee has met, and we will be meeting on the 8th, I believe, to review. We've conducted a request for proposal for internal audit services. We'll contract with a firm to provide these internal audit services, and again, that RFP is closed, and we will be reviewing the applicants or the respondents in the next day or two, and then we'll bring a recommendation of which firm to hire to the full board.
So recommendation 2.5.
Recommendation 2.5, use semi-annual shared governance training to clarify responsibilities for different parties and address areas frequently misunderstood. So the district has identified commonly misunderstood areas and has addressed some of these misunderstandings through recent negotiation process, and we'll continue to work with SLEA to create updated training materials for next year and help continue to provide greater clarity and on shared governance within the district.
Apparently, I needed greater clarity on which slide I was responsible for, even though it said A. Recommendation 3.1, focus on identifying high-performing teachers in schools and replicating their best practice, successful practices. So when I spoke with Dr. Hall about this recommendation and how we were implementing it, she indicated I could take up 5 slides worth of information, but I decided to not do that. But we previously recognized within the district shining stars, and we gave them a certificate. Right now, what we're doing is, in addition to recognizing them with a certificate, we're going to be planning opportunities for them to present to their peers, and for peers to observe those successful and best practices, and then for collectively everyone to get together and engage in follow-up and collaboration. And so when we're looking at people who will be recognized, we're looking at people who have either 85% of their students meeting or exceeding growth, who've increased equitable access for their students, who've implemented successful PLC practices, or who have made improvement in specifically targeted areas of need within the school, such as meeting the district's literacy goal. And those are just some examples. We also have new administrator training, and as part of that, we're going to focus on best practices, and mentors are going to be assigned to assist in the development of new administrators. Also, pursuant to changes in the written agreement, again, a huge shout out to Slia and Logan and Business Administrator Kearsley. Principals can hold 5 professional development opportunities based on identified needs of the school in order to replicate best practices that they see. So that's how we've implemented that recommendation. Recommendation, I don't know if this is mine. Yes, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. Establish consistent procedures for timely submission and approval of student success plans, holding schools accountable for their identified goals, and dispersing Teacher and Student Success Act funds to a school only after approval of its plan. So initially, what had happened was we were approving and submitting our plans in the fall. We've moved that up to April. As you know, the board approved the student success plans in May. And this new practice is still going to allow for subsequent modification of those plans based on any data we receive from the State Board of Education in the fall that might impact those plans. To be clear, we have always been dispersing our funds hopefully in accordance with state law, and we will be working on how to hold schools accountable beginning with the 23-24 school year. So that's how we've done that. And the recommendation 4.2 in regards to ensure administrative procedures outline that consideration of boundary changes or school closures shall be done annually, and that the process not be dependent on the leadership of the superintendent. As I'm sure you're all aware, the superintendent and the G5 administrative procedures have been updated to allow for a designee, which is the Director of Boundary and Planning, Brian Conley. He will be responsible now for leading that charge and providing all the updates to the board, so it will no longer be dependent on which superintendent we have sitting. So that's been a modification made to those administrative procedures. Any questions? Great.
One question. Well, first, a thank you. One to our board's policy subcommittee and the board's handbook committee. There a lot of work and efforts went into that. I know that for a fact. Certainly want to thank James and Mike and your executive committee for participating in this work with us as well. And certainly Ms. Kindle and B.A. Kearsley, thank you for your efforts as well. It's a lot of thanks, but seriously, I really do appreciate it. And I guess my question for the both of you and even potentially Yandri is how do we report back to the state auditor's office, or do we report back to the legislature themselves? Is it the education subcommittee? I think this is really, really important that we have a really strong follow-up and demonstrate that we took the audit very seriously, not only for the betterment of our students and our school communities, but for our community at large too. And I would love to, if we don't know that answer tonight, it might be good to explore what our options are to get in front of folks at the Capitol or what have you. But I think it'd be really important for them to hear the work that we've done and the work that we plan on doing. I know we have some more work to do as a board for some of the recommendations that were outlined in the audit, but nonetheless, I really think the board's in a good place and the district is in a good place, and I want folks to know that we're taking this seriously.
So there was no clear direction in the audit on how to report back the progress we've made, but we are happy to reach out to the auditors and ask them a process.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. The next report that we have is Strategic Plan Implementation Update. And I believe Executive Director of Educational Equity and Student Support, Dr. Buendia, will be leading that discussion for us in the report.
Woohoo.
Thank you, Dr. Buendia.
I'm actually not going to be up here by myself this time.
Oh.
So I would like to invite the other pillar leads We have Dr. Tiffany Hall, we have Logan Hall. Dr. Taylor's a little occupied at the moment. He can join us a little later. And Yandai Chatwin. Thank you. And thank you again for inviting us to update you on our work. And as you know, I'm extremely excited about the strategic plan, and we've had fabulous, thank you, fabulous work throughout. Oh, darn it. I get it. I'm probably the most technologically inept person at this table.
We need to talk, because I think I might beat you.
I said at this table.
Okay, that's fair, that's fair.
Okay, perfect. So let's begin with just a review. I mean, it was really impressive. We had many voices, stakeholders who participated in this process. And if you take a look at how things unfolded, there it is from April 2022 to board approval in March 2023. It was incredible work. So, again, thank you for your support and your guidance along the way. So what we want to do is to be able to just have, we have some highlights. I don't know why I'm looking up there when I have my document here. So as you are probably aware, and there's clearly a hyperlink, so I'm pretty excited, and that's why I was afraid to do the remote, because I thought I probably would mess up the hyperlink. So we launched an introduction to our community through various methods, including social media, and so thank you, Yandere and your team, for doing that, as well as our information and technology department with creating the beautiful website, including the accordion style. So, and it went through the newsletter. So I don't know if you can click the.
Then we have to go to it separately.
Are you able to just go to the link? So it's pretty awesome. And if you can hover over students real quick and parents, you'll see that as soon as you hover, it's available there. You hover over parents, it's available there. And where the strategic plan is. Yep. And then of course you see it on the main bar. And so those are accordions, and as you hit one of the areas, it provides that section's goals, action plans, all of that, and the year that we're intending to implement. So and you can see that there are some links for individuals who might not understand what certain, like the castle and live links. And if you don't mind, I'm going to where the hard copy is. So we had both a digital copy for easy reference, but we also have a hard copy that we can have families download. So that's how we did that. And then going back to thank you, that's the entire document. And if you ever see errors, there've been spelling errors, let me know. It's like when you're in it, right? Like we've been in it for so long, it's easy to auto-correct with our mind. In August of this year, I've had Dr. Bates recommended that I reach out to Dr. Grant and ask if she would be willing to speak to the strategic plan as part of her welcoming back in August. And of course, she has agreed. And once she is fully onboarded, then we'll go ahead and meet and have a discussion. And she's, I'm sure, reviewing the strategic plan and probably has it annotated, in really good fashion. So then what she'll do is in August, when we're welcoming our employees back, both, certified, all of our employees back in August, she will be incorporating the formal implementation or formal introduction to the plan. We have already begun, and that's part of the reason why we're all here, we have already begun to introduce it within our pillar format and avenues. And so we plan on continuing to make ties to our current work and future work related to the strategic plan. And again, it'll be formally introduced in some aspect during the welcome back for the employee groups. Thank you so much. Again, our pillars are, as you can see, educational equity, access, and student support, academic achievement, pre-K-12 transition, families and community partnerships and communication, learning environment, stewardship, and sustainability. The format that we used was to, if we had something already in progress, we're working towards it, we're identifying it as such, and I provided links for those of you that maybe needed additional information or were interested in additional information. So I will start with my area and then we'll follow along in the order in which we are presenting. So what we already have in progress, and this is to speak to concerns that we're adding a lot to teachers' plate. And so we wanted to really highlight that we already have things underway. It's a matter of making sure that it is fully implemented district-wide. And so we have some schools that have already implemented a lot of the things that we have listed with 100% fidelity, and other schools that are in progress. And so, of course, the goal is to have consistency in practice and a commitment to get the work done and be transformative, within the next 5 years. Hopefully sooner. All right, so with regard to the educational equity, access, and student support, what we already have underway is we've been working with different divisions and departments, including some of the divisions that we see here, to select culturally affirming resources. The Student Services and Counseling Department has already begun providing training with trauma-informed practices and what it means, having an understanding of how trauma affects children and families. In the SEL MTSS department, they've already begun, because we have different schools with different experiences and knowledge of multi-tiered systems of support. So that department is personalizing and differentiating it according to the needs of the school and the community. So that's already happening. Emily Sutherland's currently working with Erin Anderson, and so Emily Sutherland, because I know this is being broadcast, is our SEL MTSS director, and Erin Anderson is our special education director. So they're working together to really pinpoint a clear procedure for engaging in our Student Services Council. We've already had SEL fall and spring surveys. That's already been in place. It's tied to our ICANT statements that are tied to our social and emotional learning framework. Our signature practices, of course, I should test you to see if you remember them. Welcoming routines, engaging practices, and optimistic closure, so that it really aligns nicely with teaching and learning in terms of having students have at least equal time engaged in conversation and participating in their own learning. And then, of course, the SEL explicit instruction, 40 minutes per week, that's already also underway. And the SEL department is working with schools to personalize it and incorporate it according to their schedules. New, I am collaborating, as you can see, with research and evaluation to create a tool that will help us be able to work with schools to really dig into their data in a very deep, comprehensive, and meaningful way to inform their school improvement plans. I've already spoken about the Student Services Council, anti-bias training. We've already begun. We've already provided anti-bias training. Thank you.
It's a busy board meeting, Dr. Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, anti-bias training to our principals and assistant principals, and we've created an opportunity for them to work with us to be able to deliver it to their faculties in the fall. And I believe that is it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hall.
So we had quite a few things that were already in process from our literacy goals that were established in 2018. So we have been working with our early childhood and really working with those 3 and 4-year-olds to have those readiness opportunities. We're thrilled to have been providing some summer opportunities for our 4-year-olds for kindergarten readiness, and we are excited to be able to continue those in collaboration with our Salt Lake Educational Foundation. We have been working very hard on research-based strategies, especially with our K-3 and under the direction of the board, our 412. And we have really been seeing some increases in data that we'll be bringing to you later when all of our data is final that show that we're making some progress with our older students, which is really spectacular because often those students are not the students that are really growing in reading once they hit, I was a former high school teacher, 9, 10, 11, 12, we just kind of hope that we can get the job done. But our schools are really focusing in on what they need to do and how they are improving in their reading, and that of course sets them up to be successful throughout their lives. We're also continuing to support schools as they test with Acadience. And another thing that was under the direction of the board is we're in our schools that are open for summer school, we're providing opportunities for students and families to continue to check out books and read for pleasure and enjoyment throughout the summer, which really helps with that summer reading slide as they continue to practice those reading and comprehension skills. Some of the new things that we're looking at as we move on, we have quite a few, but we've talked in front of the board before about continuing our letters training. That letters training for our K-3 and special education teachers will continue to support all students becoming readers. We're setting that goal of having our students leaving 3rd grade on grade level. We are wanting to increase our disciplinary literacy in all of our content areas, as Dr. Bundia indicated, by increasing student talk. And increasing student talk in the classroom is really important because that's the way that students do a couple of things. First, it's how they really become conversant in the content knowledge themselves. They understand and are able to explain it and to own that knowledge. Second, it helps them develop that academic language of the discipline. This is especially important for our multi-language learners to have those opportunities to talk about content areas in classrooms in authentic ways. And that is going to be one of the focuses that we have over the next several years with our professional development. We're also building a comprehensive plan for STEM activities at every school so that all of our students have authentic hands-on inquiry learning around science, technology, engineering, and math. All of this is useless if we don't raise great children to become great adults, so we are developing a plan for civic competency and engagement for all students, things like our History Fair winners that we celebrated earlier tonight. We're also working on a seal of civic competency that students will be able to earn as they graduate. And then, of course, we're always working to support the implementation of curriculum materials that have a research base behind them, that are culturally welcoming, affirming, and inclusive, and show those evidence-based instructional strategies so that we can really support the dynamic students that we have in this district. Thank you.
That's me. So I'll share a little bit about some things that are already in progress. One goal was expanding healthcare services for students, and the Salt Lake Education Foundation is working right now on the West High Clinic. They hope to have the funding raised for that by the end of June, so they're well on their way and making good progress. Another milestone for them was the completion of construction of the Parkview Vision Clinic. There will be a ribbon cutting for that in the fall but that is going to be a really important resources for our families, especially in that part of the city. We also have a goal of collaborating with businesses in the district, and the Salt Lake Education Foundation and our CTE director are working to build those relationships so that we can expand apprenticeship opportunities for students. Many of you are familiar with our Stadler Rail apprenticeship program. That's been such a successful model. For this coming year, there's one more apprenticeship opportunity confirmed with Paperbox that will be taking a couple of apprentices, and I know they're working to expand on those opportunities for our students. And then in terms of highlighting achievements, one of our goals is to do this in a more systemic way. We've seen, looking at our social media analytics, that these posts are some of our best performing posts when we highlight, for example, the folks we highlighted tonight, we'll be sharing that on social media. And good news, as much as we can share, is great, but we want to have a systematic way to do that so that we don't miss a recurring annual award, and that we continue to show our employees how much we value and support them, and that our community can see the caliber of educators here in our school district.
Yandere?
Yes.
Question for you and the superintendent. And
Yes.
when you mentioned apprenticeships, I was reminded of the opportunity that West High had with Delta, and
Right.
and I thought that was a really cool thing for us to be engaging in. Not that we needed an answer tonight, but would love an update about that at some point. So.
Yeah, we can provide that. Thank you. A few new things. So the Family School Collaboration Department, over the summer, they're going to be collaborating with schools to build their capacity for strong partnerships with families. That will include creating school-level family school collaboration teams, and those teams might include some of the folks you see listed here: counselors, administrators, teachers, parents, students, if any of them might be interested, and obviously depending on the grade level and availability. But really the idea is that it'll be a team approach, and that'll help solidify the strategy at the school level. A comprehensive stakeholder survey. So one of our goals is to help promote the image, as we would say, of the district. And in order to do that, we plan to use polling results. This is something that does need to be done by an outside, a professional company. We have the ability here in district to survey our own population, but we really want to understand what our community has to say, what their feedback is for us, and what they're looking to get in terms of engagement from us and opportunities for the community. So by using this professionally acquired data, we'll be able to have a sound basis for a plan like that. And the goal really is to increase the trust that our community has in us, and to continue providing services and meeting the needs that our community members are telling us that they have. That's it for me.
Can I ask a question about the survey? If, as we're surveying for that, I would also be mindful that we do also need to consider surveying about a bond in the future. And I wonder what a firm would say about how many times we should be surveying stakeholders, knowing that there are many things we need to ask them. What is the timeline? And that comment is really not for Yatri, it's for us, that our big question as a board that we need to ask an outside stakeholder who, or not an outside stakeholder, an outside firm who can reach all stakeholders, not just the education community in the district and district families, is to bond. So I would just, be curious about that, and think we should keep that in mind.
Representative Anderson, is that, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that certainly not necessarily a part of the strategic plan, but survey fatigue? And are we providing
that,
too much?
When do we roll out that survey? And if we are, if it's really soon, we should consider how we're consolidating those survey questions and getting the information we want really strategically, so that we're not asking people to fill things out repeatedly and then potentially diluting the pool of information we get.
Gotcha. Thank you.
As we look at the next pillar, which is learning environment, stewardship, and sustainability, these are our physical environments that we're looking at. We want to make sure that we continue to partner with the businesses in the community, as well as the Utah system of higher education, to ensure alignment with community and industry needs. That means looking at our CTE programs and producing more kids that have industry certifications as they leave the CTE department, as well as if we look at repurposing facilities, when we remodel those facilities, to do so in line with the businesses that we were producing kids to participate in. Looking at recruiting and encouraging students to pursue a career in education, building our own teachers through our programs that are aligned at our comprehensive high schools and the CTE Center. And last but not least, working with our school resource officers to maintain safety in the respective schools, and that's an ongoing process.
And also in human resource services in our area, we've already begun the process of just implementing consistent hiring process, but we've implemented new checklists this last year to make it more consistent and transparent to all of our stakeholders, both applicants and our hiring managers, of what the process looks like and making sure that the process is done consistently. And upcoming school year, what we've done is already started tracking how long it takes us to fill current critical positions. So we want to be able to reduce that amount of time to make sure that we have the lowest amount of turnover possible to get the best hires in and get them started as quickly as possible. So already off and running and seeing some good results.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Buendia and Pillar team.
Woohoo!
That was an awesome presentation.
We're a fabulous team,
Excellent.
as well as our extended family and team.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go ahead and start us off with the questions. One, I want to, again, thank everybody, but also there's a lot of in-progress work that's already taking place with the strategic plan. I love to see that. But I'm also reminded that, we've always talked about this being a living document. And with the elements that are in progress that are specific to, students and what they're learning in the classroom, the impact that this might be having on teachers, I know that's been a concern for folks on the board. What kind of feedback are we getting about what's in progress? Are there things that we should be thinking about changing or critiquing, or is it still too early in that in progress phase to kind of determine what folks are feeling with the new plan in front of them?
The feedback, and I'm going to open it up to others, the feedback that I've received is, in terms of relief, that it's not a whole lot of new, right? And greater appreciation for greater specificity and how we're going to provide the kind of support that schools are asking for. Because this document really it drills down. It's very specific, right. And it's very specific as to when we hope to implement certain aspects of our respective pillars and goals and action plans. And so that's what I have heard. Of course, there's always concern about the new. Yeah. You can imagine there's, what does an equity audit look like? Right. And so part of, specific to my pillar, it's being able to reassure people it's not, it should be considered as a tool that really aligns well with leadership, our educational leadership practices, as well as our instructional practices, right? That we're looking at our data in very specific ways so that we are modifying our practice and our instruction to better meet the needs of a very diverse community of learners. And so it's also being able to think, really shift people's perspectives from the negative connotation of I gotcha, I'm waiting to catch you doing wrong, which unfortunately that was something that happened in the past, to we're not using it to beat you over the head with. It's really providing you the tools and whatever else that you need. And so that's the kind of feedback that I've received. Anyone else? Okay.
I think you'll have a lot more feedback as we begin to align over the summer and in the fall. The administrators are really concerned on how will the school improvement plans line up with the strategic plan and how we can facilitate that process. And that'll take place during the administrative retreat that we have when we're doing the institute in August. So, we know that training will be crucial for them, and then we'll be implementing on a day-to-day basis down in the classroom in the individual sites.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Thank you, Dr. Buendia. Board members, any other questions or thoughts?
In our previous conversations about the plan, I believe that I had some concern, and I believe, and I don't want to speak for board member Sweat, but I think that she's still with us. There were 39 bullet points, at the end of that, and that seemed to be a little daunting. And as I was looking at the strategic plan that's on the district website, I don't see the 39 bullet points like that. Is that because you have broken it down into, like it will say educational equity, access, and student support, and then there will be like 10 underneath that, and then student achievement, pre-K through 12, transition, and then there's like a dozen there. Is that incorporating those bullet points that we were talking about?
So they are in there, and they
Okay.
are, because it's an accordion style, you're going to be able to identify it. What we provided the board at the last presentation was a list of all the action plans
Okay.
that we were going to engage in the 2023-2024 academic year. And so then what we were hoping to do today to, be able to put people's minds at ease is to be able to highlight things that we already have in progress. And so it's not going to be an additional burden, because there are things that are under actions that are underway already, and then highlighting, differentiating, because the list you saw was everything, right?
Right.
So it looked like a really daunting list. And so the purpose of tonight's presentation is to differentiate what we already have underway versus the new. And so then the new looks a lot smaller, so it's not as daunting.
Okay, I assumed that's what was happening, but I just wanted to make sure that there weren't 39 other points out. So this is wonderful, the way that you have explained how we are already implementing some of those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Jensen. Any other questions?
Thank you so much for everything you've done. This is a lot of details. Sincerely appreciate that. And so we are a district that's data-driven, and for future reference, I personally would love to see some numbers. Like if we say, we're talking about equity, for example, these are the things we did, and this is where we used to be, and this is where we are now. You see, so just trying to see something that shows me there is a progress, because if there is no progress, then we're gonna need to, change the way of doing that. And also I was looking here like at the action item steps, like number 1, for example, the achievement gap between the subgroups will be narrowed, and it'll be great to have like a percentage, would like it to be narrowed by this percentage, from where we are right now, just to have certain, something to look for. Otherwise, it's just like an open-ended statement in here. So those are the things that I personally would love to see. I want to see numbers, examples, tangible examples, whatever we could do, some tracking sheet, that could help us actually see that tangible evidence of the progress.
And I will be daring enough to say that we will probably be able to we can provide data along the way. I'm not sure what that data is going to look like, because this is going to be our baseline year. And so we have to identify our baseline data. And the reason you don't see a quantifiable number is because there are so many data points that it's hard to be able to say, and we will provide something for you. I'm confident that we can. But for example, as a principal, when I was told, for your strategic plan, you need to focus on a 3% growth, that was unacceptable to me as a principal, because a 3% growth doesn't even help close the gap, right? And so part of I hear what you're saying. We need to figure out what our baseline is, so that we can determine what is achievable and not settling for less, but also, and setting, I like to set the bar high, but we want it to be reasonable, and it includes conversation. So I appreciate you saying that it's something we need to do, but I want to be really transparent and to be able to say that this is our baseline year, and so we'll try our best to provide the data that we can. Just know that because it's our baseline year, we'll then have the following year to compare with our baseline.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I appreciate that transparency, because this is not just for me, and this is also, you know, this is like a live document, so families are gonna wanna go here. If someone calls me, hey, what can you tell me about your district? Show me what you guys are doing. Hey, go in here, you will find this information over there. So that's what I'm looking, is like when we talk about the transparency aspect of things. So, yeah, and meanwhile, you know, we are here if for anything that we can do from our sides to simplify this process of providing this tangible evidence for our community would be great.
Thank you.
Board Member Bain. Student Board Member May.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate like the emphasis on public transparency, whether that's like adding multiple links to the website, adding a hyperlink, defining like another document, and then spelling out the acronyms. I think it does a lot to make people who are unfamiliar or their background isn't in education to like help understand the document, so they can help hold us as a district accountable, and also just like aware of like all the amazing things that are happening.
Thank you.
Board Member Seeker Anderson, do you have any questions? Superintendent?
No, thanks, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving along in our agenda, we're moving to our discussion agenda. We'll have about 7 minutes before we have to move to our time certain public hearing for the 2023-24 budget. Ms. Kindle, please take it away with items 1 and 2, and let's see how far we get in 6 minutes.
Great. I'll just start with Board Policy B2. So as you may or may not know, House Bill 21 was passed that had some, yeah.
I'm sorry, this board members in the, so the policy committee's been meets regularly. A number of the policies just were approved by the consent agenda, but these specific ones come to the board specifically. Why do they come to the board specifically?
Well, I was going to get there. So now you've thrown me off my whole pace and used up 20 seconds of my valuable, precious time. So
you'll be
I'll start
back when the
again.
hearing's
As House
over.
Bill 21 made some changes to the public meeting requirements for boards, we had to update the Board Policy B2, which deals with school board meetings. And as you may recall, anytime there's an update to B2, which is a policy or administrative procedure that the board owns, it needs to come to the board. So outside of the B policies and B administrative procedures, the superintendent can mostly approve any changes to administrative procedures, but practices that the board has to approve all changes to the administrative procedures and board policy. And I'll just cover this now as well. Board Policy G28, again, that would have been put on discussion because that's a new policy, so that needed to come to the board as well. So the changes that were made to B2, you'll see a lot of changes in the administrative procedures and some changes in the policy. What we did was created a subheader for the B2 administrative procedures so that the administrative procedures really only talked about participation in board meetings. We wanted to make that document specific only to participation in board meetings. So some of the things that we had in the administrative procedures we moved over into the board policy, such as like the invited presentations and some posting requirements. We added the geographical boundary restriction into the location of the meetings that had been in the AP. But really nothing was lost, so mostly what you see stricken in the administrative procedures would have just been transferred over to the board policy. So And looking at what House Bill 21 required, it requires that boards give the public a reasonable opportunity for public participation in board meetings. And that's the language that the statute specifically uses, as a reasonable opportunity. And public participation does not need to, public comment does not need to occur in board work meetings. So this board's work meetings, as the policy subcommittee discussed and as Superintendent Bates weighed in on, is typically what this board considers its study sessions. So these administrative procedures clearly indicate that if a individual would like to provide verbal public comment, that those opportunities would be allowed in board business meeting, and that we will reserve time in all our board business meetings for verbal public comment. House Bill 21 also required for us to clearly indicate in our policy how we would allow individuals to submit written public comments. So we created a subpart for any individual to submit written public comments, and that can be in any board meeting. So they can submit written public comments, and it will be attached to the official board minutes for any board meeting. So written public comment is not necessarily limited to board business meetings. So those would always be part of the official record of the board meeting. We also made some changes in terms of how people sign up. We removed some specific names of individuals. We are in the process, if you approve these changes to the administrative procedures, of updating our form on the website so that it will indicate the date of the meeting that verbal public comment will be allowed at. If someone signs up, they will immediately be notified as to whether or not they've been granted a space or whether or not the agenda is full. That notification will also be sent to the superintendent's administrative assistant. On that same place will also be an opportunity for them to either upload a written comment that will be provided to all board members as well as attached to the official minutes of the board meeting, or they will have a box where they can type it in. So there'll be both options available that way. And of course, we have we clarified in here again that the board always has the right to alter any of these procedures by a vote of the board, but we're advocating for the 15-minute time limit, and that we just grant every speaker 3 minutes. But again, that can be altered by the will of the board. But that pretty much outlines the changes to the administrative procedures as the subcommittee felt was appropriately responsive to the changes required in House Bill 21. And I have like 10 seconds.
How about we go ahead and take a break and let 7 o'clock roll around so that we can get ready for our public hearing. Thank you. We'll invite you back up once we finish the hearing, and then, of course, our action on the budget. I think we need that Jeopardy music until 7 rolls around. Really, really close. All right, it is officially 7 according to my clock, so we'll go with that. Is there anybody here in the audience tonight to speak to our budget? I know James and Mike really want to come up here. I see it. But if there isn't any, we'll move on to agenda section F for the board action on the budget. Business Administrator Kersley, would you like to start us off with that? I thought he was too.
Oh, man.
So, you may or may not remember, we had a thorough conversation about the budget last meeting. I'm happy to rehash that if you would like.
How many times has that been referenced this evening, let alone throughout the last few weeks?
But what I do want to just kind of highlight again is the proposed tax rate, which is included in the motion for the budget. As soon as Sam brings that up. So if you remember, for several months we've been talking about we have debt that's rolling off, and so the debt service levy will decrease, and we want to recapture those funds and into the capital levy. And since that'll be a change to the certified tax rate, that will require a truth in taxation hearing. This sheet up here is a little bit small to see, but I just want to note, so in 2022, the average home value in Salt Lake City was $576,000. For 2023, that's increased slightly to $576,300. So we've maybe seen at least a pause in the inflation of houses. So if you take the average homeowner home value for 2022, that homeowner would have paid $1,377 in taxes that are education related, and the levies are broken out there. The basic school levy, which is set by the legislature to fund the weighted pupil unit, then the voted local levy, the board local levy, capital levy, and general obligation bonds are all set by the school board. And then that last one was the charter school levy, and that's just how the state funds the charter schools. So as a board, you'd levy that, but we do not receive any of those revenues, so they all go to the charter schools. So that middle section is the certified tax rate, and if you remember, the certified tax rate is the rate which would generate the same amount of revenue as the previous year. So the certified tax rate, if we held it that's the average homeowner, well, the average valued homeowner would pay $1,253.91. And that final column is, as we were recommending that we recapture that debt that's going off, it will raise that to $1,272.61, so an annual increase of $18.70 for the home value of $576,300. And if you remember, we usually do $100,000 for easy math, but we're using the average home value in this presentation. So even with the proposed increase, the average homeowner will see a decrease in their taxes of $104 per year. So this chart here just shows the amount of revenue generated by the levies. That first column is the 2022 taxes that were actually paid. And then the middle column is the certified rate, and then that final column is our proposed rate that's included in the budget. You can see it goes up slightly. And since what we're really doing is recapturing that debt, I want to show you this last slide, which is just looking at the capital levy and the debt levy. So the first column is 2022 actual. You can see the blue is the capital levy revenues, and then the orange is the amount generated by the debt levy or the general obligation bond payment levy. And you can see in the proposed rate, it's really just a shift. So you have a little more blue and a little less orange. Overall, those go down just based on how the certified tax rate works. But that's kind of just representing that shift between debt levy and into capital levy. And again, because it's an increase to the certified tax rate, that is what will require a truth in taxation hearing. Any questions on either the tax rate, proposed tax rate, or anything on the budget?
Just to clarify, it's a functional decrease, even though it's technically an increase.
Correct. It's an increase by law, a decrease by actual amount of money going out.
Right. So the taxpayers in our communities will pay less, but we go through this process because of the way tax rates are established.
Yes, and through the process, so they'll pay just a little less, if that makes sense. They'll pay less, but they'll still pay less.
Perfect sense. Just trying to distill for the community, why we're going through this process, that if we approve this, it is in fact functionally a decrease for the taxpayer.
So again, what we're trying to do, so that $18.70, that annual amount that used to be paid into the debt levy to pay off our debt, we want to move that over to the capital so we can use that for, the only revenue source we have in the capital fund is property tax. And the way the certified tax rate works is we get the same amount of revenue every year. Yet, as we know, inflation is running rampant, especially in the construction arena. So in order to help offset some of that inflationary costs, That's why we want to recapture that debt and put it into the capital levy.
Thank you. Board Member Jensen.
Well, so I appreciate your explaining, and then Board Member Anderson reiterating, what the actual effect on the taxpayer is, and then also explaining why it's necessary. But my question would be, what if we don't approve this?
So if we were not to approve, right, so if we were not to approve it, that $18.70 per year would go back to the taxpayer, and we would continue to receive the same amount of revenue in the capital fund, yet our costs would continue to increase. So we'd be faced with decisions of which projects are we going to cut, which roofs are we not going to replace, or even into the future, we would possibly have to, if our needs became too great, have a much larger increase to catch up with the years of inflation that we've bypassed.
I appreciate that explanation, and really all they would get back is $18.76.
Yep. For the average value home, $18.70 a year. It's about $1.80 a month.
That's a lot of money. Board Member Sweat. Hey, and Christy, you didn't have to go first this time.
Such a nice change. So I appreciate the work that Alan does on our budget. I think he knows that. I think for me, and I thought that the question that Ashley and Brian asked were important. But as I look at this, even though it's a part of what Alan is suggesting that we recapture that, and it's a small amount of money, that is this $18, it still is us going through truth and taxation and having to recapture that and put it into capital. So for me, as I look at this, and the conversation might change because we'll have to go through truth and taxation and talk about it in August, but right now it's dedicated to capital. And the 2.5, if we're going to decide that that's what we want to do, then it should be an open discussion as to if we want to use that 2.5 somewhere else. Because as Alan already said, we're going to receive a base no matter what. The 2.5 just adds additional money in. So I struggle with this, and I appreciate that that we're talking about it, but I'm still really conflicted about having a tax increase included in our budget approval process tonight.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat. Any other questions for Alan? Board Member May?
How much does this raise for the district overall, like including the continued?
So it's $2.3 million. Again, that's money that the taxpayers were paying to pay off our debt, and we've now paid off one of our loans. So it's the same money the taxpayers paid the $2.3 million in the current year, and we're just asking to now recapture that and pay it into the capital levy.
Thank you.
Board Member Sika, Bader, Williams, any questions? Thank you, Business Administrator Kersley. We do have, in order to be super specific around such an important decision that we'll be making tonight, there is a memorandum with a recommendation for a motion that I'd be willing to entertain now. Looks like this one. Or am I the only one that has it?
The only one that has
it. Oh, never mind. I thought we had them for everybody.
It's in the agenda.
It's in the agenda, yeah.
It's just the very front cover page of the budget exhibit.
I can't log in. My computer's logged in as my kids. Won't be able to.
So President Salazar has the written copy if anyone wants to read it.
It really does three things while we're talk about the three things that we're doing.
So the three things in the motion will be to approve the revised budget for the year 2022-23.
Closes out this year.
Closes out current year, It approves the original budget for 2023-24, so next year, and approves the preliminary tax rates for 23-24, knowing that there's still the truth and taxation hearing to happen in August before that's final.
I can make the motion. It's just what's right on our agenda, correct, Alan?
Yeah, it's that middle section there.
Right, so I move that we approve the revised budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023, the budget for the fiscal year 2023, 2024, and the 23-24 proposed tax rate.
Sounds good.
Is there more on there?
There is some additional content.
Yeah, local
What
levy.
else do you need to have?
Is it okay with you, Board Member Sweat, if I?
Yeah, but go right ahead.
Okay. I recommend the board approve the following motion, that we approve the revised budget for the fiscal year 22-23 as it has been presented to the board during this meeting on June 6, 2023. The board also approves the budget for the fiscal year 23-24 as it has been presented to the board on this date. The board also declares that it intends to increase the capital local levy by an amount necessary to generate $2.3 million. These funds will be used to cover increased capital costs and future capital needs. As the tax rate shall exceed the certified tax rate that will be set by the Salt Lake County Auditor, the board will hold a truth and taxation hearing in accordance with state law. In addition, the board authorizes the business administrator to make any budget adjustments necessary to reflect funds received from the final approved tax rate.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? I have a motion and a second from board members Anderson and Bade. Any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with board member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, no.
Bryce Williams, yes. Jenny Sika, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you, board. Thank you, community. Thank you, Business Administrator Kersley. We really appreciate the efforts and everybody's discussion this evening as well. I'd like to invite back up to the table. Just break your other foot, why don't you?
Same one.
Oh, no. Well, don't do that. Please, Ms. Kindle, if we could pick up where you left off with B2 administrative procedures.
Right. So I was done, but I'm here to answer any questions anyone may have.
Board member Anderson.
Chrissy, I'm fulfilling your role of going first. I had a question about B2, which is, so it's written to allow these written comments. So could you just explain for the public, like I think I understand now some of the reasons for this, but why virtual comment isn't being utilized as part of the policy? Like if I'm a member of the public, I'm seeing, sometimes we have to join virtually, and there have been questions about why public comment can't be made via Zoom. So is there some reason for that?
No, I mean, that would just be a change. There's no legal reason why you can't allow public comment via Zoom. We did that clearly during the COVID pandemic, that we had people participating in public comment via Zoom. It's just not how it's currently written. But I don't believe that would be like a significant change to how verbal public comment would be. It would just be that we would allow you to still make verbal public comment, but you would just be doing it remotely.
I have an additional thought, and that's the way the law is written. Anyone from anywhere who would like to make comment can come make comment, and that's a great thing. On the one hand, these meetings are public meetings. I remind that while they are public meetings, they are not the public's meetings, but they're public meetings. Anybody can participate by watching and so on. You now always have, but by law, can allow folks who sign up to speak. If you open that venue to the World Wide Web, then folks could sign up and take up 3-minute slots who might not have any geographic or practical connection to the district. That's simply an issue that they have. Now, we'd be willing at this point to receive their comment in writing, even if they live in London and are concerned about how lunches are prepared and so on at Uinta Elementary, which just to raise a bad memory. But
Thanks.
But there would be that could generate interest from all over the world, literally, and take up those in-person slots. And if we have the in-person slots limited to people who actually can come to the meeting, then the chances of those being folks that are constituents of the district itself is raised, and those opportunities aren't precluded by folks who may be issue-driven but really not connected to the district in a practical, geographic way.
Superintendent, Board Manager, do you have any follow-ups?
No, I just wanted to clarify for, all of us here and who's watching some of the reasons why the policy might not include that at this time, even though it could still be discussed in the future.
Right. As you were talking, I was reminded, I can't remember if it was a conversation with you or another superintendent at one of the trainings that we've participated in this year, but I think there are boards out there who give priority to commenters or public speakers who reside within the boundaries of the school district or the community of which the school district's in, what have you. Therefore, kind of minimizing some of the potential of what you might be.
And I'm not sure that the law allows that any longer.
Okay.
Correct.
Which is the key.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Are there any other thoughts or questions for Ms. Kendall?
Could I ask some questions? So I have some more about thoughts, and I appreciate, it would be nice to hear from the subcommittee in regards to the work that they did on the policy, and I appreciate the work that Ms. Kendall has done and also the information that you provided to us, which I think is really clear. I think what I would like to do is to have our board consider, at one time, of how the format of our study sessions is laid out. There's been some conversations around having a request to speak during the study sessions. And for me personally, I look at there's two ways that we've done study sessions in the past. The first way was the first hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of your meeting was just a study session. You would break for dinner, but it gave you an opportunity to have 1 or 2 subjects that you could talk about in depth in a less formal way that provided not only the board and the presenter to talk and the superintendent to ask questions, but it also invited the opportunity to have organic conversations with the people in the room who were also interested in the subject that we had. So that's one format that we used to have. The second format, which is what we're looking at right now, is that we have one meeting that is our study session. And I think that, to our fault, when we load up the agenda with multiple items for a study session, it doesn't allow for organic conversation. It doesn't allow for, the chair to possibly call on one of our association, presidents if they have a comment that they want to make, because you have that ability to do that. That was the reason why we put the study session together in the first place, was to allow for a less formal format, have these organic conversations. But I also think that we need to, as a board, really make the suggestion that we don't overload our agenda, that it really is only a couple of things that we can talk about. It has a limited consent agenda because we still need to have the business of the district to go forward, but to really be mindful. Now, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances that might cause something to come up on that second meeting, but I'm hoping that what will happen is that it will go back to either some kind of organic conversation around those subjects or topics, with everybody that's in the room, which then, would be a great opportunity, to have a conversation. And for me personally, I used to take those conversations that we'd have at the board level and take them to my school community council meetings and talk about, this is what we talked about at the board meeting, these are the topics that we're talking about, and then get even more feedback. Because I think that when we get into a practice of having an action agenda at a study session, we make decisions that are either we're hearing a topic for the first time, which is not good practice, or that it doesn't allow for enough discussion because we have too many items on that agenda. So that's just my 2 cents. I appreciate what's been formed on the policy, and it looks good to me, but I think that now it's just changing a process and some practice and having a conversation of what we want to have those study sessions look like.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat, and I hear you, and I honestly feel like that would be a good topic for an upcoming retreat when we get that scheduled, and trying to clean up some of these elements that are similar to that, just how we function, how we do our business, how we organize and plan for our agendas. So thank you for bringing that up. It's really important. Vice President Williams.
Yeah, and I wanted to speak a little bit to what Christy had suggested. That's something that I've been thinking about over the course of the last week, and particularly looking at our agenda this evening. But part of, Board Member Sweat also asked to hear about some of the conversation that the subcommittee had, and part of this as well was something that Ms. Kendall spoke about, as well as creating better opportunities for that public comment. So things that are on the website, that automated system that bounced back that said, yes, you are signed up to speak, or no, you didn't make it this month. I think that's kind of a collaborative conversation. As President Salazar mentioned, maybe that's something we talk about in an upcoming retreat and formalize that practice moving forward.
Thank you, Vice President Williams. Any other folks from the subcommittee? I guess Brian, the remaining subcommittee.
Well,
and Jenny?
We also considered and also put in the opportunity to have the box, which, you have alluded to, but I think that that's valuable, that they can be typing in their comments because it's right there in front of them.
Thank you. Board Member Seek, anything you want to add? Thank you. All right. Ms. Kendall, I believe we've made it through items 1 and 2 of the discussion agenda. The board can take their kind of process of moving this to action after we've finished a particular comment on the discussion for a board approval. Is there a motion to move discussion agenda items 1, board policy B2, school board meetings, and B2, administrative procedures to the action agenda?
I move that we move item 1, approval of the 2023, my goodness, board policy B2, school board meetings B2, administrative procedures, school board meetings, and did we also talk about board policy G28?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, so I move that we move item 1 and 2 from the agenda into the action agenda. Action.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Board Member Bade and a second by Board Member Christie to move this to move items 1 and 2 of the discussion agenda to the action agenda for board approval. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with myself. Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
That motion carries. Now that we're in the action agenda for these 2 topics, is there a motion to approve both board policy B2 and the administrative procedures?
Board President Salazar, I move that we approve board policy B2, school board meetings, and B2, administrative procedures, school board meetings.
All right, we have a motion by Board Member Sweat. Is there a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Board Member Bade. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Bade.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes. That motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Kindle. Thank you, Board Policy Subcommittee, but you're not done. We have
aware.
one more, a third policy that we need to discuss and review as well.
Okay. Board Policy G28, just for new board members, there are lots of different ways that the board might choose to adopt or bring a new policy to the board. Sometimes it's just a concern we see at the district that we would like this. Sometimes it's board initiated, and sometimes it's a requirement based on new legislation. And that the proposal for a new board policy G28, school resource officers, is a direct requirement from House Bill 61 that was passed in the last legislative session. It requires us to have a school resource officers policy. The title of House Bill 61 is School Safety Requirements. It's a pretty lengthy bill. There were really only a few lines related to the requirement for us to have a board policy. One was that it include our SRO MOU. The second one was that the policy be approved in an open board meeting in which the public would have had an opportunity to comment. So that's what we're doing here today, and we had public comment. And then that it include any other procedures or requirements governing the relationship between the school resource officers and the board. This policy is drafted using language that's in our came out of our SRO MOU, that came out of state law, what it requires, and also using the resources that the statute specifically refers us to, which is the United States Department of Education recommendations on school resource officers, some of the national associations of school resource officers. So that's how I drafted this. The other components of this are, as part of our SRO MOU, we really want stakeholder feedback on how how the SRO program is doing in our schools. And so you'll see like a hyperlink at the end of this policy, and clicking on that hyperlink takes the individual to two separate forms. One is to relate a concern, one is to relate a positive experience. So with this policy, we're really hoping that we'll get more feedback from our constituents and stakeholders about how our SRO program is functioning. So because this was required to be put in place immediately, we drafted it and the policy subcommittee reviewed it. We discussed it at our last board meeting, and we're presenting it here today for board conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Kindle. Would anybody from the board policy subcommittee like to start the conversation this evening?
Start well.
Just any questions, comments?
The comment is what she said.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Nothing additional, understood.
I have a question, of course.
Board Member Anderson.
I've talked a little bit about this with Christina, so I understand that there's some state code that requires the SROs be listed in the capacity of a teacher in certain situations, and they teach vocational classes. My only concern with the way this is written is the languaging that SROs are educators. I feel like it's kind of complicated to classify them that way when we don't have a very expansive view of what that means. Like, we're not talking about licensed teachers who are, there are many paras doing the work of education who aren't classified as educators. And so it doesn't really sit well with me to write it that way, but there may be some requirements that it is written that way. So I don't know if others have thoughts about that. Maybe they think it's semantics. That's my only concern with G28 as it's written.
So for board members who aren't aware of what I shared with Board Member Anderson over the weekend, the United States Department of Education, their approach and best practices for an SRO program is sort of a triad approach in which SROs serve three roles. One as a law enforcement officer, one as a teacher/educator, and one as a counselor. And it's taking a much more expansive view of what it means to be an educator or a teacher, to talk about the legal system, about the judicial processes, about bullying, about anything that would relate to criminal justice. And so that's sort of one portion of that triangle that's referenced in that. It's also has been part of our SRO MOU that was approved by the ACLU and the Attorney General's office for a very long time. That language is in our SRO MOU. It's part of that. I will also say that, as Board Member Anderson referenced, state law does require that as part of our SRO MOU that we indicate that SROs will teach, if asked by the district, law enforcement classes. And at the request of Board Member Anderson, I did some checking in terms of whether or not we have law enforcement officers teaching those classes. Currently, we do have law enforcement officers teaching concurrent enrollment classes and a CTE class. Currently, the law enforcement officers who are teaching those are not SROs, just in the full transparency of what the current situation is. But our expectation is that school resource officers are acting in a capacity of a teacher in a broader perspective than just a licensed educator. But of course, I'm happy to use whatever language the board would like. I just want you to be aware that that language probably is in our SRO MOU as well.
Christy has something.
Thank you, Christina.
Of course.
Board Member Sweat?
So I just want to thank the policy committee and Ms. Kendall for this policy. I think that over the years, as we've looked at, what needed to be done, the pieces and parts to it, as far as the training and the cooperation and the partnership, is so well stated in this policy. And I think that, especially those two paragraphs that talk specifically about annually completing, a training, and that the purpose of this policy is to provide and maintain safe, healthy, and productive learning environments by establishing a cooperative, proactive, problem-solving SRO partnership between the Salt Lake City Police Department and the district. That is a powerful statement. And I just think that that's the kind of policy that we need to have, is good direction, a powerful statement like that. This is that we are in partnership, with our police department to make sure that our schools are safe learning environments. So thank you to the policy committee and to Ms. Kendall for the language in this proposed G28 policy.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat. Board Member Jensen.
I think when we were working on this, well, first of all, as you said, it was required, but as we deliberated on it, as I look at that first paragraph and the way that it outlines how that SRO program operates, it really reflects what happened in a school incident a day ago. And to me, this is really valuable to see that, okay, we have now stated the policy, and the policy is already being implemented. But now there's a reference that supports what we're hoping will happen, or what we're expecting will happen in schools to keep them safe.
And I will say this is very reflective of what our current MOU is, and what hopefully the future one will be when we get to approving that.
Perfect. Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Kendall. As you have seen in our memorandum for this particular item, the new state law went into effect early last month on May 3rd. And it is, quite important that we really evaluate if this is something that we want to approve tonight, and I would certainly entertain a motion to move this to the action agenda.
I will move that we move Board Policy G28, School Resource Officers, from the discussion agenda to the action agenda.
Thank you, Board Member Jensen.
Second.
We have a second from Mohammed and a motion from Board Member Jensen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Bade.
Mohammed, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes. Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes. Now that that's moved to the action agenda, I'm willing to entertain a motion to approve G28 as presented to the board?
I move that we approve Board Policy G28.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second that motion.
Excellent. We have a motion from Board Member Sweat and a second from Board Member Jensen. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Jensen.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, no.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Policy Subcommittee. Thank you, Ms. Kindle, for all of your efforts and time that you put into this work to get to this point this evening. Moving along on our agenda, I want to invite up Christopher Sullivan for the renaming proposal of South Park Academy. Board, as you know, we heard from South Park and Mr. Sullivan regarding the desire of not only the institution, but a number of students who participated in a survey. We asked Mr. Sullivan to join us again so that we can have a further discussion and potential action relative to the proposal that was presented. Chris?
So just thank you again for having me here, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of our students, our staff, and community partners over at South Park Academy and the Utah State Correctional Facility. So as you know, when we discussed at our last board meeting, we kind of talked a little bit about the history and how South Park Academy came about. Most of the evidence was mainly anecdotal. It's been around, we know, for 70 years. It originally started in the Jordan School District, and as President Salazar stated, as of this year, Salt Lake City School District has taken over the educational services at South Park Academy, and as Salt Lake City School District started looking at what that would look like before the school even opened up, there was discussion on whether or not there should be a name change. What was the name? We didn't even know what the name of the high school was at the particular time. I think prison school kind of popped up just until we could kind of figure out what the name was. And then we started looking at the G16 board policies and how we can go about changing that name. And so once the school opened up, once we had a principal in line, once we had the School Improvement Council coming on board, we were able to start discussing with the students how they felt about it. We talked about the institution. We wanted to know how Utah State Correctional Facility and Department of Corrections felt about a name change. And as you can imagine, many of the things that kind of popped up, obviously it's no longer within Jordan School District, or at that time it's Canyon School District because it transferred over to Canyon School District. With it coming over to Salt Lake City School District, it just felt like it was a fresh time to change. The students were very excited, and really it gave the students an opportunity to have some ownership. And again, this is a very underserved population. And so with that underserved population, they felt like a great sense of pride, and they really sat down and they thought about, what can we do? What could we name this school? And how could we have an impact, not only for us, but for future generations who are attending this particular program? And so we went through the G16 policies. We started talking about, how we would go about that name changes, what community partners we would come in contact with, and how they could sit down and actually help us approve that name and get that put forward to the board. So we went through all of those processes. We went through stakeholder surveys, we went through the electronic surveys, we went through the manual surveys with the students, and as President Salazar stated earlier, a majority of our students had more say in anything than anybody else. I believe it was 2/3 of the stakeholder surveys were from the students and that population. And they had 3 choices, which they pretty much settled upon, and those are the three choices that we presented to the board, and hoping that you would be able to maybe make that change for us at some point in time.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. We really appreciate it. And it's also my understanding, just recalling and going through the notes again this evening in preparation for the meeting today, that it's not only the name, but we're also talking about a mascot.
The mascot and the colors as well. Actually, in speaking with everyone else, nobody could tell me if South Park Academy even has a mascot. So again, that was like, well, this is our opportunity. Let's take advantage of this and just do all this right here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Chris before we move on?
Yeah, I was just looking, so right now we have Skyview Academy as the first.
Correct.
Eagle as the mascot, and purple and silver.
Correct.
As a color. Okay. Yeah, so can we move it to?
Yeah.
Yeah. President Salazar.
Yes.
I move that we approve the name change.
Mohammed, can we move it to action first?
First to the action agenda.
Okay, I move that we move the name change of prison school.
South Park.
South Park Academy.
South Park Academy to action.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and I have Board Member Sweat's hand up. Is there something you'd like to contribute to the discussion?
I'll wait until we get to the action agenda. That's fine.
You got it. Thank you. All right, any discussion on this motion? All right, seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Sweat.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Excellent. That motion passes. Thank you, Board. Now that we are in the action agenda, please keep in mind if there's, just to make sure that we cover all three elements of what's been presented to us a couple of times. And I don't know, Christy, if you wanted to make your comment now or if you wanted to wait for a motion to have been had.
I can wait until the motion's made.
Okay. I'll call for a motion to approve the name change, the mascot, and the colors for the renaming purposes of what is now the South Park Academy.
Move to approve as stated.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Board Member Sweat, a motion from Board Member Sweat and a second from Board Member Bade. Any discussion? Christy? Oh.
Yeah, I just
Do we wanna
wanted,
clarify
Mr.
the
Sullivan,
names?
I wish I were there to shake your hand. I just think that what you've done and what you've put together in such a short amount of time is commendable. And I think that looking over all of the information that you have provided to the board is just spot on. So thank you for being the thoughtful leader that you are for that school. The students are very lucky to have you at the helm.
Very much. I appreciate that.
Any further discussion, Board Member Bade?
I'm just wondering, like, in the motion, if we should, like,
Yeah, I'll
state
restate the
name.
motion. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Board Member Anderson?
I just wanted to say that the only question I had before we approved this was whether the already Skyview, High that's in northern Utah had heard about the name change, and I heard we'd communicated with Cache County, and so I just wanted to state that that had happened, and everyone was, great. It sounds great.
Perfect. I actually think they were quite excited after talking with you about that. So, thank you, Superintendent. I'll go ahead and contribute to the discussion. I had the privilege of attending the graduation at South Park at the correctional facility. It was a really powerful opportunity and a really powerful moment. And Board Member Sweat is spot on, Chris, about how fortunate the students that are part of our district and the correctional facility are, and just how fortunate they are, right, to have not only you, but the staff that you work with, the teachers at the facility. They're invested in their students just like all of our teachers are, and they're really committed despite whatever obstacles or challenges. We talked a lot about mistakes yesterday and how to overcome mistakes, and it's one of the more powerful experiences I've had in my time here as a school board member and certainly as the board president. So thank you for that. Just to restate the motion, as I understand it, that we'll be approving the name change to Skyview Academy. the mascot adoption of the Eagles, and the colors of purple and silver. I'll open it up for a roll call vote, starting with Vice President Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Chris, congratulations. Will you please...
Congratulations.
Yes.
Will you please report to staff and students and the Department of Corrections this latest change and adoption? I think it's really important. I think that the students will be really, really excited to know this.
They're very excited. I cannot tell you how many questions I had to field about that today. And can I just say, I know, I appreciate all of the kind words, but I feel like I'm the lucky one. I think President Salazar can attest, after attending that graduation yesterday, that our students are just, they're so happy to have someone trust in them and knowing that they are trying to make changes in their life, and I'm just happy to be a part of that.
Thanks. Right. That concludes our action agenda item. Superintendent, do you have a report to give?
Just one. We've had a number of questions the last couple of days about the installation of weapons detectors, and so, Alan, could you update us on that?
Yes, just like to give an update. So we've been discussing the weapons detectors for several months now. I just want to report that those are scheduled to be installed at our 3 comprehensive high schools at the end of June, the end of this month, and then they'll be prepared to go online at the beginning of school in the fall.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board member reports. Would anybody like to share anything? We'll start with Board Member Jensen and work our way around.
I have just had the opportunity of attending several of Brian Connolly's presentations on our boundaries. And I appreciate his work, and I appreciate his sticking to it when it's been challenging. And the response that I have seen from the community, I've been to 3 different ones, it's been really helpful to them, and I appreciate that we're moving forward on that, and I think he's almost caught us up to where we were supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Jensen. Board Member Anderson?
Yeah, I had an update from the board's finance committee, and we can attach those notes to this meeting's minutes as well. But for everyone's awareness, as a group, we reviewed the RFP and RFSQ process for our required internal audit and services from the board's legal counsel. And the committee did recommend some changes to the procurement process administrative procedures, which basically means how schools buy certain items. Our recommended changes would go next to the board's policy committee for discussion, and we also discussed the budget prior to the report that we all had tonight. And outside of committee business, I have been able to attend a lot of art nights and end-of-year programs, which is wonderful. But I also wanted to say I appreciated seeing students, families, and faculty participating in various Pride Month events. And I was able to attend the state board meeting where board member Sarah Reel, who shares many of our boundaries, actually, because of the way it's cut up, she represents a big section of Salt Lake City, and she presented on her story and the need for honoring all students for who they are. And I wanted to express how I appreciate that our district is supportive of GSAs and other clubs, which we know reduce the risk of discrimination and harassment of queer students, families, faculty, and staff in our buildings. And that I hope we continue those supportive policies, and I celebrate Pride Month with everyone celebrating.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. I'm going to stick to this side of the room, and Board Member Sweat, I see you have your hand up for a report.
So, amen to Ashley. I think that, it's an exciting time in our lives, but I will tell you that it's been a little bit of a full circle for me. I have a granddaughter who's in 1st grade, and to be able to have that resurgence and to see how excited she is to go to school every day, but also a better appreciation for our elementary school teachers. It's just a packed day for them. But watching her come out today, and I got the privilege of picking her up over at her school with the biggest smile ever, saying, Grandma, guess what we got to do today? And I love that. I love the enthusiasm of the kids in our district, and the teachers, and how thoughtful and careful, not careful, but how much they care for our kids. And, you tend to forget that sometimes when you don't have kids, in schools. And I absolutely loved it. It was just such a great day. They're all very excited to get out of school. It's like, yay, the end of school. We're done. Anyway, it's just been a great week. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Sweat. Student Board Member May?
So I'm graduating on Friday.
Woot, woot.
After 13 years in the district. So I've gone to Hawthorne from kindergarten to 6th grade, and then I've been at West High School from 7th to 12th. And I just wanted to say that I'm immensely grateful for the memories, relationships, and lessons the Salt Lake City School District has taught me. And on the behalf of the class of 2023, I want to say thank you to all the teachers, staff, faculty, board members, administrators who've made an impact on our lives.
Thank you, Lydia. To be clear, just because you're graduating on Friday doesn't mean you're off the hook for our meeting on the 20th. So please make sure to be in attendance.
On my calendar.
Perfect. Vice President Williams.
Well, I don't want to follow Lydia, but I actually have a number of things I wanted to highlight. One is last week I had the opportunity to attend the Rose Park bike bus with Mayor Mendenhall, Jennifer Newell, and Trina Perez, who has organized the event multiple events over the course of the last year. It was a really cool opportunity to ride a few blocks. Made me pull out my bike I haven't ridden for 4 years and get it all tuned up, but that was a good incentive to do so, and it was just a really cool opportunity to be there with the kids and the families. Also wanted to highlight Slicksy had their Addams Family School Play that I got to attend last Tuesday night. It was a really cool performance, and I'm very glad that I attended it. I was probably laughing louder than most people in the audience, but it was really funny and really cool. Wanted to also highlight Dr. Buendia and the Title VI committee that did the honoring ceremony. That was a really cool thing to attend, and I believe 3 or 4 board members were able to join me at that as well. And they also put on the Native Youth Day, which was cool to attend. Sorry, I think I have 1 or 2 more things. Also, the Stadler Rail apprenticeship signing ceremony, I got to attend that as well, and I'm just really proud of those students and what they're doing with their education. And then just wanted to do one brief recognition. I think we might be doing a little bit with this next board meeting, but Angela Bothwell from Mary W. Jackson received the Utah State Board of Education Science of Reading Award and was able to attend that and surprise her during that time. So, and just general, again, thank you to everyone in our district and all the work that you do. I'm really appreciative as well. Thank you.
Board Member Babe?
Yes, it is indeed such an amazing time to see the kids excited to leave, and then the parents are like, oh no, we got a long 2.5 months to go for. So, but we are, I just want to say thank you to all the teachers, staff, and everyone that has been involved throughout these challenging years, actually, to make sure that our kids continue to progress and advance and be able to move from one level to another, and let alone, graduate. And also, happy LGBTQ plus month. And to my brothers and sisters out there, know that you are in a district where you should feel loved. You are in a district where this is your home. We are here, we are one big family, and the love here has no boundaries. Please never hesitate to reach out. At least I'm not here to speak on behalf of the rest of the board, but I know they will accept that. Never hesitate to pick up a phone or send an email and just chat. But know that I'm here for you, and I wish you a very, very happy month. And know that you are loved in this district. And don't let anything stand on your way. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Bade. Board Member Sika?
No, congratulations, we made it.
That was almost as short as your speech last year.
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, I do have a few things, and I also had the opportunity to attend the honoring ceremony for our Title VI students. I love attending that ceremony every single year. Thank you, Dr. Buendia, and to your team for pulling that together. It was really, really special. So thank you for that. I also had the opportunity to attend a golf clinic. Y'all are shocked, I know, because I'm always golfing. But nonetheless, Lindsay Myers has been named the head golf pro at Forestdale Golf Club. She is the first woman to ever be a golf pro in the Salt Lake City Corporation golf division, which I think is really, really exciting. And she's already, just doing amazing things, making connections with our local schools, in particular Nibley Park, which is right around the corner from the golf course. Through the mayor's office, had our students invited to attend a golf clinic. Sixth grade students with Lindsay and with the mayor had the opportunity to go out there and work with students and work with the mayor and the other golf pros that were part of that clinic. There's a lot of momentum for getting our students engaged with golf, and a potential desire to have a golf league amongst our students outside of the high school and in elementary and junior high too. So stay tuned for that, and we look forward to more proposals from the city on that front as well. I also had the opportunity to attend a couple of events at Benyon last week. The first one was the Mount Everest project that fourth graders participated in Miss Winslow's class. Basically what they do is they learn about Mount Everest, what it takes to climb Mount Everest, the culture of Nepal and Buddhism, and the role that Sherpas play. And they invite their parents, they invite their fellow colleagues and students in other grades to hear their presentations. One of the really unique elements, aside from learning about all things Mount Everest, was a visit from a gentleman named Appa Sherpa. He's summited Mount Everest 21 times. It's not the most, but he's up there. He's probably in the top 5. And the fact that we had somebody like him who comes consistently to Benyon and to our city to engage our fourth grade students is really, really exciting. And he brought prayer flags for the students. He brought a really special scarf that brings good luck that they give a lot of climbers when they're climbing the mountain. The other really cool event that took place that day as well was the first annual soccer game between Benyon and Liberty. And Board Member Bate, I'm sorry to tell you, but Benyon won the first annual soccer game. So next year we might have to go and support the students in a different way. But nonetheless, it was a really exciting opportunity, and it's something that they definitely want to continue to have on an annual basis at the end of school. Also just want to give a huge shout out to all of our students, all of our teachers on a fabulous and amazing school year. Really can't thank you all enough for the efforts that you all make in cultivating the lives and opportunities for our students and preparing them for not only graduation, but for their lives ahead and how they're going to contribute to our communities as well. So thank you, teachers, thank you, administrators, cabinet members, all of our employee associations. Mike and James, Tanya, thank you for doing what you do to provide quality, nutritious meals that bring energy to our students every single day. We can't thank you all enough because our students, as you've learned tonight, are and will continue to be at the center of everything that we do here in the school district. And with that, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Was cruise through.
Okay, I'm gonna get on
Okay.
organized here.
I'll see you on Friday.
That was great.
That was.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to watch your speech.
Holy Christ, that was exhausting.
That's one right for a few things that I've